Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So they are back with the patch 6.1a breakdown. Now this is a pretty interesting one, mostly because of the time that they're releasing it. Normally it's released a little bit later in the week, but this time they released it actually very early in the week and at a very weird timing that they don't normally release it. But anyways, you know, enough about all that nonsense. Let's just get straight into it and talk about what's going on, right? So first off, Nocturne, new jungler coming out in the middle of the month, so we still got about 2 weeks or so to Nocturne's release. Obviously, his most unique mechanic is the fact that he can make the screen dark for everybody and kind of make you lose vision, which is a very, very interesting mechanic to have in the game. So he's going to be out in the middle of the month. Then we have AAA ARAM, which is Hextech ARAM, coming back in the middle of the month, as well as Arena and Earth. Of course, this is going to be when the whatever that star thing is called in the system is going to light up, and that's when all of the fun game modes are coming in, right? So let's get into the champion changes. Now I have to say that I disagree with majority of the champion changes in this patch, and we're going to go through them one by one. So first up, we have Sion, who apparently needs a buff, right? I disagree with this completely. I think Sion is an insanely strong champion if he's played in the correct manner, which most people are not granted. But here we first have his passive, which is going to deal extra 2% damage from 8 to 10% to whoever he's attacking. So that is just makes his passive better, which just means that people dying on Sion is going to get rewarded even more. Then we have his W, which is the shield. Cooldown going down by 1 second, not too impactful, but the bonus shield value you're going to get is now scaling off your max health better, and at max rank it's going to be 13% to 16%, so you're going to get an even larger shield. Now these are not the biggest buffs, but as I said, I don't really think Sion needs buffs, right? So it's going to make him a little bit better, but not too much in the grand scheme of things. So Garen also I don't really think needs buffs, but he's getting a buff to his E, right? So it's going to do 3 extra damage at every rank. So of course that means when you spin, it's doing 3 damage extra damage every tick. And again, I think Garen is one of the best top laners. I don't really think he needs a buff, and this is a damage buff to his E, which I guess is his main damage tool. So this is definitely going to be an impactful buff for Garen. So Leona, again, I also don't think Leona needs a buff. I think that, of course, she's not in the best of spots now because it's an enchanter meta. However, I do still think that Leona is in a very decent spot in terms of her tankiness, right? So they basically buff her W, which is the one that gives her tankiness. So she's getting extra armor from extra armor and magic resist both from the W, and you max W first, right? So you're gonna get 80 to 100 resistance instead, so extra 20 resistance, which is really, really huge. And the base damage is also going up. Now base damage is not very important. That's in the middle of the ability, you will kind of like explode, right, and deal a bit of damage to people around you. Like the damage is not really important. It's more about the tankiness, and this is a pretty big buff to Leona. So don't really think she needed it, but I guess it's nice that Leona's getting some love. Better than Garen and Sion, two of the top laners getting buffs, right? So Wukong, he's gotten buffs, so many rounds of buffs that obviously he's gonna be too strong eventually, which is like now, right? So he's finally getting nerfed. So the health regen he gets from his passive is going down by 0.15%, which is a decent amount considering you only get 0.5% per second, so you're now only going to get 0.35, and the base damage on his E is going down. Now this is not really the biggest of nerfs on Wukong, but definitely it's a step in the right direction considering he's too strong now. If anything, I think Sion and Garen should be getting nerfs instead of buffs, but hey, you know. So someone who needs a nerf that's finally getting it is Victor, right? So Victor, we all know he's been pretty strong in the early and mid game, and he's been completely busted in the late game. Like he does way too much damage in the late game. So they're nerfing his scaling. So first off, on his Q, they're hitting his 2 main damaging abilities. On his Q, the base damage is going down slightly in the later ranks, and the scaling is going down by 5%. Great. His E, the base damage is staying the same, but the scaling is going down by 10% for both phases. So once again, this is a relatively decent nerf to Victor. So definitely a step in the correct direction, and a really, really well needed nerf. Now I knew Sivir was gonna get nerfed eventually because I've been playing so many games of her where I'm dealing insane amounts of damage. So the W is obviously her main source of damage. So what they're doing is the base damage is going down by a really, really decent amount at all ranks. It's going down by like 4 at every rank, which is a really big nerf. Right, and the AD scaling is also going down by like 2% in every rank, so Sivir is getting a large hit. Now I'm not sure if she's still gonna be top tier, like second best / best ADC anymore after these nerfs, because this is really a huge hit to Sivir. So yeah, Blitzcrank is also getting a pretty big nerf. His base health is going down by 60. Now 60 base health is a lot, right? So he's going to be a lot weaker in those like level 1, level 2, level 3 fights. And the hook is also going to be doing less damage in the when you start like maxing, which you're still going to max it first, but it's going to deal less damage. I mean, the hook damage not the biggest deal. Base stats getting reduced is always going to be a huge deal. Jinx is in the same boat. She's getting 4 less base AD, which is really quite a big nerf. And in return, she's just getting a slight reduction in her Chomper cooldown, which is like 1 second cooldown. Now, this is kind of negligible. Like 1 second on Chompers doesn't really matter. 4 AD is a huge nerf, right? Because base AD is always going to be a big nerf, because the main reason why is like, I used to think, and like some of you guys might think that, you know, it's just 4 AD, right? It's not a very big deal. But what you have to consider is that having 4 less AD at the start means every single auto to every single minion or every single champion for the entire game, you have 4 less AD, and this adds up to a ton of damage loss. So that's why base AD or base stat nerfs are always going to be a big deal. So Jinx getting hit quite badly here, but I really don't think Jinx was all that strong. I think she's middle of the pack ADC, but yeah, she is getting hit, so she's definitely going to be affected by these nerfs. Now, perhaps the most interesting change of the entire patch is smite changes. So to cut a long story short, junglers get bonus 15% basic attack damage to monsters, right? But starting from 2 minutes, which is basically after your first clear, because most junglers were clear in about 130 or 140 seconds or so. So after your first clear, every subsequent clear, starting at 2 minutes, the bonus damage will decay by 1% every 12 seconds, and at 5 minutes, the bonus is fully removed. So that means your first clear, you're getting the bonus. The second clear, you're getting a decaying bonus, and by the third clear, you're getting no bonus at all, which is very, very huge, because this 15% extra damage to monsters used to be for the entire game. This means that junglers will clear jungle more slowly for basically the entire rest of the game, except for the first clear. Now, it seems like pretty bad, but honestly it's not that bad, right? I mean, like if you're playing like an ADC or a mage and you actually farm jungle camps, you will realize that you do decent damage to camps. So when you get to like 5 minutes or so in the game, you're roughly almost at an item or at an item. So that means that your damaged jungle monster is going to be fine, so it's not that big of a nerf as it appears. However, you have to consider that every single jungler is basically going to do less damage to jungle camp, so it's an even playing field. But at the same time, when you compare jungle to other roles, it just means junglers will clear less quickly compared to right now. And perhaps the bigger nerf is starting from minute 730, junglers no longer receive an extra 20% gold from taking down monsters. Now this, I think, is where the bigger impact lies, right? So jungle as a role is just getting nerfed, right? So after 730, you get less gold from monsters. Right? So not only are you killing monsters more slowly, but you're also getting less gold from monsters. Now, I would think that if I'm a jungle main, these changes would piss me off, but thankfully I'm not, right? If anything, I think as an ADC, I think one of the biggest problems with jungle is really that you get too much gold and XP in the early levels and not the later levels, but these nerfs seem to imply that Riot thinks the problem is in the mid to late game instead of the early game, so junglers are getting less gold from taking down monsters in the later parts. So, I mean, yes, you know, junglers are getting less gold, they're doing less damage to jungle monsters. It's kind of horrible for junglers, I guess, but at the same time, again, it's the same for all junglers, so you shouldn't be really looking at the jungle role amongst the junglers, but you should be comparing the jungle role to other roles, right? So this means that junglers get less income, and therefore it means that compared to other roles are getting more income than what junglers are getting now, right? So they're going to be getting less income in this future patch, which just means the jungle role as an entirety is just kind of nerfed. So yeah, we'll have to kind of see how this impacts the meta, because obviously jungle is a very huge part of the game, and junglers are a very huge part of the game as well. So we'll kind of have to see how this really affects things. But aside from that, you do have quite a number of skins coming out. You have Bioforge Darius, the Weather Entity skins, as well as the Mecha skins, all coming out throughout this patch. But with all that said, that's the end of the breakdown, and thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.